Hi, and welcome back to U.S. History with me, Mr. Snyder, and today we're going to continue our discussion of how America gets involved in World War II. So, to summarize the lesson today, while Britain and France are appeasing the dictator in Germany at Munich, American President Franklin Roosevelt kind of takes the aggression that's going on in Asia and condemns it, but does little action to stop it. As war is exploding in Europe, it becomes difficult for the U.S. to maintain its isolationism and neutrality, and once again, America is going to have to decide what role it wants to play in shaping world policy. So that Asian aggression we talked about last time, Japan attacks China without an official declaration of war. Roosevelt condemns these acts of aggression, but he personally does little to stop it. Personally, Roosevelt is an interventionist and he wants to get involved and stop this, but due to events going on in the 1930s and a report that says that big business interests colluded during World War I to get us involved so they can make money, he has to be careful about presenting these views to the overwhelmingly isolationist public. So leading up to the war, Hitler violates the Munich Pact, which was supposed to maintain peace, and takes over the rest of Czechoslovakia instead of just the Sudetenland. Hitler, knowing he is square in the middle of Europe, doesn't want to fight a war on two fronts, which would be fighting against the Soviet Union, an enemy that he has on one side, and against Great Britain and France on the other side. So before the war, he signs the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact with the Soviet Union, which promises to not attack one another and divide and conquer Poland secretly. And so then on September 1st, 1939 is the beginning of World War II, and that is when Germany invades Poland. And they use the tactic of blitzkrieg. That probably should have been a blue word, but it puts emphasis on speed and firepower. It's a sudden and swift attack against your enemy, throwing so much firepower at them that it overwhelms them and they cannot possibly defend themselves. And it's where the term blitz in football comes from. The Soviets attack on September 17th and also take over the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. So that later on, Germany will violate this pact and invade the Soviet Union as well, but the Soviets are on the Allied power side, and the Axis power side ends up being Germany, Italy, and Japan are your three main Axis powers. Your Allied powers are the Soviet Union, Britain, France, and China. France has been taken over, so they can't really do a lot. And eventually the United States, due to their similar background with the Great Britain and trading partners with most of these countries, will enter on the Allied side. So the war moves on, and in 1940, 1939, 1940, Germany invades the countries of Denmark, Norway, Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg, and all of them fall almost immediately. Then Germany sets its sights on neighbor France in May of 1940, and France falls to Germany in just 35 days. Germany rolls through the Maginot Line, which was built in the 1930s when Germany was building up their army and showing militaristic tendencies. They thought that France was trying to protect itself. So the Maginot Line is this yellow line you can see here on the map. And basically, Germany rolls right through it. It doesn't stop their blitzkrieg at all. And so France is divided into two sections: occupied France, which is controlled by the Germans, and Vichy France, named after their capital. And it is technically neutral, but it does have Nazi leanings. Then, with France taken over, Hitler sets his sights on Britain, and the Battle of Britain begins in July of 1940. New Prime Minister Winston Churchill takes over for Neville Chamberlain in May, and he ends this policy of appeasement and vows never to surrender to Hitler. Hitler uses his German Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force, he uses it to destroy the British Royal Air Force and gain control over the skies of the English Channel and Great Britain. And he does this, and then he bombs London every single night for a month, which is called the Blitz. He also doesn't just bomb military targets, he bombs civilian targets. Houses, churches, historical landmarks are destroyed during this time. So Britain is holding out, and Hitler makes the decision to postpone the invasion of Britain because they say they're not going to surrender. And so many times during this period of attack on Britain, Churchill basically calls out to the United States in speeches and said, we need help from the United States. And there's a debate going on in the United States. Should the United States enter World War II between the isolationists and the interventionists? And the isolationists believe that we should stay isolated. We should avoid alliances with other nations. We should focus on the depression at home. We have our own problems. This is Europe's problem. They should deal with it. The only way to keep us safe is to stay neutral. Intervention in a foreign war is a mistake. We don't need any more World War I's. And so most of the nation throughout the 1930s is isolationist, leading up to 1937, 1938. And overwhelming majority of people are isolationist. The interventionists believe that the United States should work with other nations to promote what is called collective security. And the Axis nations are wrong in what they're doing. They threaten American interests, so we should get involved and stop them. The Allies are the ones who are fighting for freedom and democracy, which is what the United States stands for, so we should get involved and aid the Allies. And we should put pressure on the Axis powers and prepare for war. That is the interventionist viewpoints. So United States isolation, we do sign 3 Neutrality Acts throughout the 1930s, Congress does, saying that we will not get involved. We're not even going to loan or give weapons to any nation at war, called a belligerent nation. Only allows trade with warring nations on a cash and carry basis. And then in 1939, the 1939 Neutrality Act, the U.S. does a cash and carry basis, which we're neutral, but we still need some manufacturing going on in the United States to get us out of the Great Depression. So buyers during this time pay in cash, and they're not allowed to use any credit, because if other nations owe us money, then we are invested in seeing them win the war, and we are no longer officially neutral. This way, cash and carry, we're still neutral. So the buyers pay in cash up front, no credit, and then the buyer must also send ships to pick up their weapons. We're not going to risk American ships being blown up in the Atlantic by German U-boats, so we need to they need to send their own ships to pick up the weapons. This is modified later to become the lend-lease program. Edward R. Murrow during this time in 1940 is bringing reports from London during the Blitz about what's going on, and this shocks Americans. In late 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan solidify their alliance with the Tripartite Pact, and they officially become allies together. Here you can see the difference between the Neutrality Act of 1939, which is cash and carry, and then the Lend-Lease Act of 1941. This allows Roosevelt to lend aid to any nation that he sees fit. He gives about $40 billion worth of aid to the Allied powers during this time. It is basically an economic declaration of war on Germany, but again, it inches us further toward getting involved. And you can see here, we are officially neutral, then we do cash and carry, and then we start loaning out weapons and aid to other nations that need them. The Atlantic Charter then is basically officially engaging in a relationship with Great Britain. So Roosevelt and Churchill secretly meet in a warship off the coast of Newfoundland, right outside of Canada, and they discuss war strategy, which their war strategy is going to be to defeat Hitler first and then worry about Japan. They both signed the Atlantic Charter, basically making our relationship with Great Britain official. And it also says that nations shall determine their own government or self-determination. And Great Britain and the United States would lead an international system of general security. And this is not unknown to Hitler. We have the Lend-Lease Act and then the Atlantic Charter. Hitler takes notice and orders his U-boats to begin attacking U.S. ships in the Atlantic. And this shocks Americans. Sailors are killed, ships are sunk, and this brings the U.S. even closer to joining the war at the end of 1941 in December. But we'll get to Pearl Harbor next time. Oops, spoiler alert, sorry. We'll get to Pearl Harbor next time and go ahead and complete those learning targets, bring them back to class, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.